So in previous class, we discussed about a new concept called as what is class. As the definition that we can give, that is class is a virtual entity. Virtual entity, it means something which is not real or a blueprint or a model. Then before we create a class or for any new concept for that matter, we have to know the syntax of it. So when it comes to class syntax, I'm writing AM for access modifier and class keyword, then programmer defined class name, then followed by open curly brace, closed curly brace is the class syntax. What a class can have, the variables and the methods. As of now, we know the variables in terms of data types concept. Methods we didn't discuss yet, but we know only one method as of now called as main method. And then we discussed about what is the access modifier meaning. The meaning of access modifier is access modifier will control the access of the data. This will control accessing class data. Yeah. Then in place of this access modifier, there are three predefined keywords. One is not a keyword. So public, then protected in the order of hierarchy I'm writing. The next default we should not write. That's why angular brackets. Then private is what we discussed. So with the help of this syntax, then we discussed to create a class that is to store some object data. I might be used mobile or laptop. I didn't remember. So let me go for something else. So there is a mobile and which is having some data like something like this. Okay. Then to store the data, we'll be creating the class in place of access modifier public class keyword, then class name, a meaningful name of programmer choice. So here one rule to remember, class name, every word has to start with capital letter. Mobile M capital. So in my previous examples, I'm taking class name as test, T capital, sample, S capital, demo class, 2 words, D capital, yeah, C capital, like that. So that is a rule to follow. It's not mandatory. We don't get any error, but it's a professional way of writing the code by following the rules. So inside this class, so this is my data. So to store this apple, which is a group of characters, we'll be using a string as a data type. Then company is my meaningful variable name, then assignment operator, then string data must be enclosed in double quotes is a rule of Java. Then 8 GB. So for example, if this GB is not there, only 8 if you want to store, then we can go for integer. We want to store along with this 8 GB, then digits and group of characters. We can't go for primitive types. So here also we have to use string. Then RAM is my variable name equals 8 GB is the value. Then in double quotes because it's a string. Then 50,000 is a price. So then it is a range of integer value only. So we can go for data type int variable price. Then 50,000 is the value semicolon. So this is the purpose of a class. Class is used to store some data and to have some functionality that is coming with methods. So these are variables. Now, if we create one class in Eclipse like this with a file name called as, what's the class name? Mobile. Therefore, file name will be mobile.java. If we execute this program and do we get any output? Does this class data will be loaded into the memory? Into the memory, this class variables will be loaded? No. Because for every Java program to execute, so there is a starting point of program execution. There is an ending point of program execution. And within that only, Yeah, so because of no main method, so there is this program or this mobile class data will not be loaded into the memory. So the point is, when we take any class, so public class, class test, inside this, if we have public static void main, I'm writing short form, and here the string square brackets space args, then opening and closing. If we have some lines of code int x equals say some value, then JVM will start every Java program execution from open curly brace of main method. This is the starting point of the program execution. And it executes all the lines of code which is present inside one after the other directly, or they may have some indirect relations. As of now, I can use that term only. So what is it indirectly, which we'll come to know as we move forward. Then after executing all these lines, once JVM reaches this closed curly brace, this is where the program execution will be stopped. Entry point, exit point, or starting point. This can be entry of the execution, and this can be the exit of the execution, or this can be starting, this can be ending. Yeah. So now in the same file, if we have our class called mobile class, I'm writing short form again, public class mobile. I'm not taking all the data, only some int price equals some price. In this scenario, is JVM is coming to execute this mobile class, or it is starting from this opening of main method and ending with closing of main method? So here only it is execution is done. It means into the memory or into the RAM, what data will be loaded. Even though this entire thing in one single Java file only, still the execution will be done for the mobile class? No, because from this mobile class, there is no relation into this main method. There is no relation. Because of this no relation, then JVM will not execute this mobile class. Then this price will be loaded into the memory? No, only this X value, because of first line of execution, X value will be loaded into the memory, but this price will not be loaded into the memory. That's why a class is called as what? A virtual entity, because of this reason. As we already discussed, I'm just repeating since it is important to understand. Because a class by default is a virtual entity, it means there is no physical memory allocation for the class data by default. That's why it's called as a virtual entity. Understood? Yeah. Last class one I just repeated, nothing new. Yeah. Then the next point, how do we make this class data to execute or to allocate the memory for this? So for that, the next concept, this is what already I discussed in the previous class. Then in today's class, to make that class as a physical entity, our next concept is object. So what is object? Object is a physical entity. Object is a physical entity, or we can say a real world entity. Then how to create the object? By using class name. If you remember the class definition, class is a virtual entity which is used to create the object. So now by using class only we are going to create the object. What is object here? It's a physical entity or a real world entity. If I go for real life example that we discussed for class concept, we discussed something like a plan of home on the drawing sheet. So on the drawing sheet only, excuse, there is a house plan is there, right? But now because of this object, what is going to happen? The house construction is really going to happen. So on the land, the house is going to be so a real house. So previously on the drawing sheet, does it have any uh, place to occupy? On the drawing sheet house, can we go and stay there, or can we place some objects there? No, we cannot. But once it is a real house, then can we place something? Yes, we can live and we can place all the objects and all. That's how it is a real world entity. One more example we discussed during a class concept, like, so we are checking a mobile phone through some e-commerce application. So I want to purchase a mobile, so and so mobile. Now what is happening? It is going to be coming to our hands. The Flipkart person is going to deliver into our hands. It will become, once it is in the application, then this is a virtual entity only. It's not a real thing. But once it is delivered to our hands, then it will become a physical entity or a real world entity. A general real life example meanings. Then how do we make sure that the virtual entity members will occupy physical memory? That's what a programmatic example we should know. So for that, again, like a class, new concept, syntax to be known first. Similarly, object, what is the syntax of this object? The object syntax says class name, then space, object, reference, variable. Just a variable name only also I can write it. But for your more clarity, I'm writing object reference variable, then assignment operator, then new, then space, class name, the next open and close parenthesis, semicolon. So this is the syntax of object creation in Java. We are going to use this object for more than 1 lakh times in our class discussions only. And once it is real life projects, we'll be using some lakhs and lakhs times. So it should be understood very clearly. So here, so for which class we are going to create the object, that class name we are going to use here. Okay. Then it is just a variable name. Variable names are always programmer choice. So I'm using the Angular brackets. The next assignment operator, that is equal to symbol. Then here class name. So here what class name we are using, here also same class name we'll be using. Then open and close parenthesis is a part of syntax of object, then semicolon. So what is extra thing or different thing that we don't know? It is a new is one thing we don't know. What is this new? New is a predefined keyword in Java. It's a predefined keyword. Then what is the purpose of this new keyword? What it will do? Whenever this new keyword is there, new keyword is responsible for creating the object. For creating the object. That means whenever JVM finds this new keyword, JVM will create object in the memory. That's it. That's the simplest point to know. Then for every new keyword, one more point, for every new keyword, a new object will be created. Or again, new and new, a different object can be created. It is a point to remember. Clear? Now, just to understand the object creation, let me take one example. Say there is a class name A and having a class body. This is a class. Now, where to create and all those things we'll discuss later. But just by using this syntax, how to create the object for this class? Please tell me. For this class name called class A, by using this object syntax, how to create the object is my question. So first, what we should use? Class name. What's the class name? A. So therefore, A we have to use. Second, object reference variable name. For example, say X is my object reference name. It's a variable name, that's all. Like int X we are using, so here also some X. Then followed by equal to symbol or assignment operator. Then new is a keyword completely, it must be in lowercase letters. The next class name, again A, then open and close parenthesis, semicolon. So this is the syntax of object creation for this class A. Yeah. Then next question, where to create this object? Where you should create, if anybody understood? The yesterday's class or today's revision before this object concept? If you understand, yeah. So we have to create the object inside a main method only. Why inside a main method? Because JVM executes only main method body. That's why object has to be created inside the main method. Therefore, the virtual entity is going to become a physical entity. So where to create the object? So as of now, we know only one main method, but a generalized answer where to create the object. So for this, the generalized answer is objects can be created inside a method. This is the generalized answer. Inside a method only we have to create the object. Outside a method, it's never possible. And yesterday also we discussed one more point where we can use a print function. Print function must be used inside a method only. Outside a method, it's not possible. So here is one more point. We can create object, or it is allowed to create the object in Java inside a method only. Outside a method, it's never possible. Now with all this discussion and in previous discussion of virtual entity, now let us understand how do we make this as a physical entity. So for that, I am taking one simplest example. The example is, say, write a Java program. So I'm using a short form, write a Java program to store your some PAN card data into a class and print the data. So what's the meaning? Is it directly we should store inside one main method and we should print them like variables and data types? No. So the point is, first we have to create a class only. Then we have to use the main method for the object creation and execution as well. So just please understand, stop writing. So first we create a class. So what is a class syntax? Access modifier, then class keyword, then class name. So since it is my data of PAN card, so I'm going for PAN is my class name. Yeah. So inside this, what is the generally PAN data will be there? Name, date of birth or PAN number. So these are the main things and all. So for example, name is of which type of data? String type of data. The variable name is name itself. Then assignment operator, some dummy name ABCD. Then one more thing, date of birth, and another one, PAN number. So since PAN number is also group of characters and digits, therefore you should go for string only. PAN number is my variable name. If you just notice clearly, P is small, N is capital. Two different words. So this is the standard for using a variable names in Java. I'm not saying what is that. If you just observe, follow. Otherwise, at this point of time, it's okay. Then, so since it's a string data in double quotes, say some AFRPT 4538R, some PAN number I'm using, simple. So this is the first part of the question. Then is this class is a virtual entity or a physical entity? Virtual entity. Then how do we execute this class to print the data? Directly we discussed, if we take one more class in the same package, so for example say public class some test class. So for any Java program to execute, that class should have a main method. So public static void main, and here the proper syntax of string square brackets space args, then open curly brace of this main method, followed by close curly brace of this main method. So then here, if this main, the class which is having a main method, if it is having some data like int x equals to 10, then now is it possible to print this x variable? Yes, this is what we discussed in data types concept. System.out.println, we can print this x variable. Now is it, is it possible to print this PAN card data like name and PAN number directly here? No, it's not possible. Then how do we make sure that it will happen? We have to create the object for this PAN class from the main method only, because JVM executes main method body. Then how to create the object? By using this class syntax, class name, then object reference, assignment operator, new keyword, then class name, parenthesis, semicolon. So this is how we create the object by using object syntax. Are you getting me? Any confusions or any questions, please? No. So directly, if you are using some mobile class or laptop class, we discussed in the last part, where it is not loaded into the memory. That's why this class is going to remain virtual entity only. Now, how to make that virtual entity into a physical entity? By creating the object. So where we to create the object? Inside a main method, because JVM executes main method body only. Yeah, so that's why by using this object syntax, the object is we are creating for the PAN class. Is it clear? Sure. Then if this is the scenario, what will happen inside the memory? So if I take this RAM as a memory here, first, from where the execution starts? From open curly brace of main method, JVM will start the program execution. So where it will go? JVM will enter into the main method first line execution. So because of this int x equals to 10, x variable will have a data called 10 with of 4 bytes memory consumption. Next, print this x. So that is, we'll get the output in the console part that we'll discuss later. Next, pan p equals to new pan. So whenever there is an assignment operator, JVM will divide that line into two parts. One is like in mathematics, we say right hand side and also left hand side. Which part will be executed first? Is it right hand side or left hand side? Always in any programming language, right hand side only will be executed first. Then at this point of time, if you ask me what about this first line, here also equal to symbol is there. Will it execute from left to right or right to left? Everywhere in any programming language, assignment operator makes the execution from right to left only. In the initial class, if I say, there may be a possibility of confusion, but now the meaning is 10 is assigned to a variable called x, which is of integer type. That's how we have to read that line also. Understood? Yeah. Then here, because this right side code is executed first, what is there? New keyword. What's the meaning of new, or what's the purpose of new? What's the purpose of new? New will create, new is responsible for creating the object. So what is an object means? It is again some part of memory only. This is the object for a class object. This is, sorry, not a. So what's our class name? PAN. So it is a PAN class object. Yeah. So since this is object is new for pan, that's why pan class object will be created. Some memory will be allocated for pan class. And from this right hand side only, because the class is pan, from here JVM comes to the pan class, open curly brace. Yeah. And enters into the pan class body. Now the first line of code will be executed. So once this is executed, then what should happen? When a line of code is executed with a variable and value, that data must be loaded into the memory. So inside this object only, the name variable with a value called as ABCD will be loaded into the memory. After this second line of execution, so this value will be loaded into the memory. So here inside this object only, not outside the object. So here pan number is a variable, then a value, some AF RPT 4538 or something. So these two lines of code got executed. After that, it is ending of the class. Ending of the class. Therefore, JVM will come out from this class and comes to the left hand side now. So from right hand side execution, it went to the pan class, executed pan class code, and now it is coming to the left hand side. Now what is there? For this entire object, there is a reference variable name which you are using, that is P is the reference variable name. Yeah. So this is what the object creation makes. The data of virtual class will be having a physical memory allocation. That's why object is called as a physical entity. Only class is called as a virtual entity. Understood? Yeah. Online, please respond clearly. Is it understood or shall I explain with any other example? Yeah, some of you might feel like the memory discussion and all are not required and all. No, actually they are required and we should be aware of these things. The execution flow we should know, then only our logical programming will be correct. If you just assume that, okay, JVM will do something, then we will be failing most of the times in logical part. That's why every line of execution flow we should be aware. Yeah. Parvati, any questions, please? No doubts. Thank you. So this is the virtual entity to with object creation. The class data is loaded into the memory. It means it is becoming a physical presence of the memory. Some physical memory allocation of the memory. Clear? The next point is how do we print this data? Before object creation, it is not loaded into the memory, therefore it's not possible to print it. Now it is loaded into the memory with the help of object creation. How to print this? That's the next point. So that's next point is how to print this data. Yeah. So before this, I'm going back to one of our previous class discussion. That is, when it comes to data types of Java, there are how many types of different types of data types? Yeah, one is primitive, and one more is a non-primitive. So when it comes to primitive and all, we know all those things. But the point is, by using primitive, is it possible to store more than one value at the same time? For example, if you are using some integer type as data type, then x is a variable name, assignment operator, can we store 10? Semicolon. Is it correct syntax? Int x equals to 10. Is it correct syntax? Yes, it is correct. But if you use some int y equals 20, comma 30, I want to store. Is it possible? Not possible. By using primitive, we can store only one value at one time. But can we store two values into one variable at the same time? This is syntactically wrong. That's why primitive are also called as simple data types in Java. Yeah. When it comes to non-primitives, we have seen one example of string. But now if I use a class concept, class concept. So by using the class, just now we had a discussion. In this class, how many values we can store? 2 I am storing in this example. Can we store 3? Yes. Can we store 10? Can we store 100? It means in a class, we can store any number of values at the same time. In the same way, when it comes to object, inside this object, how many values can be there? N number. That's why along with a string, class concept and also object concept comes under the non-primitive, where we can store multiple values at the same time. The other name for this primitive is simple. The other name for this non-primitive is complex. Yeah. So therefore, there is a clear difference is there in Java, how to print simple data type of values, then how to print complex data type of values. That with the same example I am going to discuss. So first, let us go for one class. Say again, I'll go for some, okay, same pan class only. Inside quickly, I'll take some string, a variable called name equals some name, say James. The next, some int age equals some 30. Some data is there in this pan class. Yeah. Now, is it a virtual entity or real entity? Virtual entity. Then how do you make this real entity? Take one more class, say test is a class name, and inside this test class, public static void main method and a string array args, then main method opening and closing body. If we have a variable directly inside this main method, say for example int x equals to with some value called say 100. Yeah. And then followed by, if we create the object for this pan class, can you please tell me how to create the object for this pan class? Class name, object reference name, assignment operator, new keyword, then again class name, parenthesis semicolon. Now, if this entire code is executed by JVM, when JVM execute this entire code, what will happen in the memory? Inside the memory, so the JVM execution starts from open curly brace of main method. So this is the starting point. Then it execute this line of code first. Yeah. 100 is the data. Location name is X with a memory of 4 bytes because it's a primitive type. Yeah. After the first line of execution, JVM comes to second line of execution, and right side will be executed first. Because of this new one object will be created in the memory, that is again some part of memory only. And from here, JVM comes to pan class, executes the line of code one after the other. Therefore, here name will be, yeah, James is the data, will be loaded to the name variable and some memory of 10 bytes because 5 characters. The next second line of code, 30 with a name as age because of int type 4 bytes. This is what will happen. From this ending of the class, then JVM comes to left side of this pan, and P is the reference variable for this small p. Then ending of the, after this no other lines of code, then JVM stops the program execution. Yeah. So now the next point, what we discussed is to print a simple data type, directly we can go for print function. So can we use a system.out.println, print the variable name called X? Is it a correct syntax? Yes, X is directly available here. So therefore we can print a simple type directly by using its variable name. Now, is object is a simple type or complex type? This X is a simple data type, but this P is a complex. Then how to print this complex data? Can we write print function or print statement inside this pan class? So here can we use print system.out.println, print name. system.out.println the variable name. Is it possible? Yeah, so this is syntactically not possible because print function is not allowed to write inside a class body directly. Where it is allowed to write? Inside the method only. So as of now, we have only main method. Therefore, here only we have to write it. Correct? So for example, yeah, online students, if it ends in a minute, so please join back by using the same link.